I told you, that smoke is a violation!
It's a family lunch, Martha. Stay on your side.
It's a public nuisance! You're doing this to provoke me!
The wind is blowing north, Martha. It's not even hitting you.
I don't care. I feel threatened. Put that weapon down. 911? Yes, a man is threatening me with a metal weapon. Send everyone!
The protagonist of this interaction is Dr. Andre Sterling, a 42-year-old senior civil engineer with a focus on municipal infrastructure. He earns an annual salary of $195,000 and has lived in this specific residence for 6 years, maintaining a mortgage on a property valued at $1.2 million. At the time of the incident, he was hosting a small gathering for his father's 70th birthday, a lawful and routine use of his private property. The antagonist is Martha Higgins, a 64-year-old retired administrative assistant who has lived in the Oakwood Creek subdivision for 22 years. Higgins receives a pension of approximately $48,000 a year and has a documented history of filing 17 different complaints with the Homeowners Association over a 3-year period, 14 of which targeted the only 2 black families on the street. Her internal files at the local precinct show a pattern of suspicious person calls that were consistently cleared as unfounded. Before we examine the forensic evidence of the police arrival, a question for the audience. In cases where a neighbor repeatedly uses emergency services as a personal enforcement tool against a specific demographic, should the penalty be a simple fine, or should it carry a mandatory prison sentence for filing false reports? State your reasoning in the comments based on the legal distinction between a mistake and a pattern of harassment. The Oakwood Creek subdivision is a textbook example of late 1970s suburban expansion, characterized by manicured St. Augustine grass, uniform brick facades, and a silence that is aggressively defended by its older residents. The temperature on this Saturday in June was 88 degrees, with 70% humidity, a climate where the smell of charcoal and hickory smoke carries easily through the heavy air. The neighborhood has seen a 30% demographic shift in the last decade, transitioning from a predominantly retired white population to younger, high-earning professionals of color. This shift often creates a psychological friction point known as territorial defense, where long-term residents view the presence of new demographics as an inherent loss of control over the environment. The sound of a distant lawnmower and the occasional chime of a doorbell camera are the only interruptions to the stillness, making the sudden arrival of 2 patrol cruisers at 1412 an abrupt sonic shift. Dr. Sterling's psychological state is one of calculated composure, rooted in a lifelong understanding of the legal system and the specific risks associated with his identity. He knows that his actions are lawful, yet he remains hyper-aware of his physical movements to avoid providing any visual hooks for a biased observer. Conversely, Higgins's motive is rooted in vicarious authority. By calling 911, she attempts to outsource her personal animosity to the state, expecting the police to act as her private security detail. This behavior is often reinforced by a belief that her tenure in the neighborhood grants her a higher tier of citizenship. 2 years prior, on August 14th, she called the police on a delivery driver she claimed was scouting houses, a call that resulted in a formal warning from the department regarding the misuse of the emergency system, a warning she clearly chose to ignore. At 14:15:22, the bodycam of Officer Miller captures the initial contact as he exits his vehicle. "Sir, put the tongs down and step away from the grill right now." Miller's voice is strained, his hand resting on the grip of his service weapon, a high-stress posture that ignores the presence of 2 children and an elderly man sitting at a nearby patio table. "I am currently cooking food on my private property, officer. I am not a threat." Sterling slowly places the tongs on the side table of the grill but does not step away, maintaining his legal right to occupy his space while complying with the verbal command to disarm. "He's been threatening me with those, and look at the smoke. It's a fire hazard," Higgins shouts from her lawn, her voice cracking in a simulated display of distress that the camera at 14:16:05 shows is not accompanied by any actual tears or physiological signs of panic. "Ma'am, stay back. Sir, hands behind your back." "Hind, we've had a report of an assault with a deadly weapon." Miller moves forward, his gait aggressive, while his partner, Officer Vance, begins to circle to Sterling's left, creating a tactical pincer movement. The footage at 14:16:40 captures Sterling's father, Robert, standing up from the table with a slow, deliberate grace that suggests he has spent decades in uniform. "Officer, I suggest you lower your voice and check the ID of the man you're about to put in cuffs." Robert Sterling's voice is not a plea. It is a directive, delivered with a flat affect that momentarily causes Officer Vance to pause. "Sit down, old man. This doesn't concern you unless you want to be charged with obstruction." Miller reaches for Andre's wrist, but Andre keeps his palms open and visible, a forensic detail that contradicts the assaultive nature of the initial 911 call. "My name is Robert Sterling, badge 104, retired deputy chief of the Metro Department, and you are currently violating the Fourth Amendment rights of a homeowner." The audio at 14:17:15 reveals a sudden silence from the officers, the sound of the wind through the trees now the only audible element as the power dynamic undergoes a violent shift. At this peak moment of tension, here is our second comment bait. When an officer receives a 911 call alleging a deadly weapon, are they legally obligated to treat the suspect as armed even when the visual evidence, a BBQ grill and tongs, suggests otherwise? Or is this a failure of basic situational awareness? Share your perspective in the comments on whether better safe than sorry justifies the escalation we see here. The camera at 14:17:45 shows Officer Miller's hand slowly moving away from his holster, a micro-expression of doubt crossing his face as he looks from the son to the father. "Chief Sterling?" Miller's voice has lost its edge, dropping an octave into a tone of recognition and budding professional dread. "That's right, Miller. I remember your name from the academy, though it seems you've forgotten the module on investigative bias." Robert Sterling walks toward the officers, not with aggression, but with the steady pace of a superior officer conducting an inspection. "We got a call about an assault, sir. We had to respond." Miller's defense is weak, his posture collapsing from a dominant stance to a defensive one, his eyes darting toward Martha Higgins, who has suddenly stopped shouting and is now backing toward her front door. "You didn't respond to a call. You responded to a lie without checking the perimeter or the context." Robert stands between his son and the officers, his presence acting as a physical barrier that the officers are legally and professionally hesitant to breach. At 14:19:30, the turning point is captured in a wide shot from a neighbor's Ring camera. Martha Higgins reaches her front door, her movements hurried and jerky, a stark contrast to her earlier bold stance on the lawn. She realizes that the authority she invoked has turned its focus onto the validity of her claim. Officer Vance turns his body cam toward her, the red light a silent indicator that her previous statements are now evidence in a potential criminal filing. Her shoulders slump, and she avoids eye contact, a physiological collapse often seen when an individual realizes their social capital has been exhausted. Inside the house, she watches through the blinds as her neighbor, the man she tried to have arrested, stands calmly while his father lectures the officers on the legal repercussions of their arrival. There are no dramatic speeches. There is only the quiet, heavy realization that a $5 million liability has just been created. The legal and financial aftermath was not a swift stroke of karma, but a grueling 2-year procedural grind. Within 48 hours, an internal affairs investigation was launched into Miller and Vance's failure to properly assess the scene before escalating to a deadly weapon response. Both officers were suspended for 30 days without pay and required to undergo 80 hours of recertification in bias-neutral policing. However, the real destruction was reserved for Martha Higgins. Dr. Andre Sterling filed a civil lawsuit for intentional infliction of emotional distress, defamation per se, and malicious prosecution. The discovery phase of the trial revealed Higgins' long history of unfounded 911 calls, creating a pattern of practice that made a settlement inevitable. The court timeline stretched into the following year, with Higgins' legal team attempting to argue that she was simply a concerned citizen. This defense crumbled when the 911 audio was played in court, showing her calm, calculated tone while describing the weapon, which proved she was not in a state of fear, but was intentionally fabricating a threat. The final settlement was reached out of court, $5.2 million, covered partially by Higgins' insurance and the remainder by the liquidation of her assets, including the very house she had sought to protect from nuisances. Justice was slow, expensive, and clinical, involving 3 separate law firms and over $450,000 in attorney fees deducted from the final payout. This brings us to our third comment bait. Many argue that the $5.2 million settlement is excessive for a neighbor dispute, while others claim it is the only way to deter wealthy residents from using the police as a weapon. If you were on the jury, would you vote for a massive financial penalty to send a message, or do you believe accountability should be handled through the criminal justice system alone? Let the debate begin in the comments. Today, Dr. Andre Sterling continues to live in the Oakwood Creek subdivision, having used a portion of the settlement to establish a nonprofit that provides legal counsel for victims of predatory 911 calls. His father, Robert, passed away a year after the settlement, seeing his son's name cleared and his legacy of integrity upheld. The Sterling property now features an expanded outdoor kitchen where the family still gathers, the smoke of the grill a symbol of a hard-won victory. Martha Higgins, however, saw a rapid social and financial decline. After selling her home to satisfy the judgment, she moved into a small rental apartment in a neighboring county. Her reputation in the community was permanently tarnished, and she remains under a court order that prohibits her from contacting the Sterling family or filing 911 reports without immediate verification of a life-threatening emergency. The final reflection on this case isn't about the grill, the smoke, or even the $5 million settlement. It is about the forensic reality that video evidence has stripped away the presumption of truth once afforded to certain voices in authority. In the past, Higgins' word might have outweighed Sterling's, but the Bodycam and the smartphone do not have biases. They only have timestamps and audio cues. The psychological need for control often blinds individuals to the legal reality of a changing world, leading them to believe that their personal discomfort is a matter for the state to resolve. When the camera proves that one person's threat is another person's family dinner, the weight of the law eventually shifts to the side of the evidence. Truth and authority are no longer synonymous, and in the forensic age, the only reality that matters is the one caught on tape. Let me know your thoughts in the comments.